Greetings, friends. I'm Vitaly Portnikov. The chief and tangible outcome of yesterday's phone call between United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio and the head of the Russian Foreign Ministry, Sergei Lavrov, was the fact that these diplomats decided to postpone their meeting to an as yet undetermined future date, which was originally scheduled to take place between them as early as this week. It is believed that Marco Rubio and Sergei Lavrov are now going to prepare for another phone call. However, the mere fact that they won't be holding a meeting on October 23rd, as was originally planned after the phone call between the presidents of the United States and the Russian Federation, already clearly signifies that Trump's strategy to bring an end or even a temporary halt to the Russian-Ukrainian war could face another fiasco. The meeting between Rubio and Lavrov could only be postponed for one reason. The stances of the United States and the Russian Federation are so utterly contradictory regarding the conclusion of the Russian-Ukrainian war that there's absolutely nothing for them to discuss, not even the presidents, but also for the diplomats. As we now understand it, Trump doesn't want to suffer another foreign policy fiasco, especially after the significant defeat he experienced in Anchorage. And now he needs a tangible and concrete real outcome from any potential meeting with Putin. And this real outcome, derived from the telephone conversation between the United States Secretary of State and the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation, is truly nowhere to be seen. So what basically happened? After the meeting in Anchorage concluded, and practically all global media outlets were talking about a serious fiasco for Donald Trump, the American president, recognized the necessity of altering his foreign policy tactics when engaging with his Russian counterpart. And instead of continuous phone calls, endless persuasions, and face-to-face meetings, an effort must be made to exert pressure on Putin to compel him to recognize the critical need for a ceasefire on the Russian-Ukrainian front. That same ceasefire which Putin consistently rejected during every phone call he had with Donald Trump. Trump failed to take any concrete, tangible actions that might have compelled Putin to come to terms, yet he initiated a genuine escalation with his rhetoric. This included promises to provide Ukraine with Tomahawks, which would have presented a serious problem for the Russian oil refining and military-industrial complex if it had actually transpired. And also the threat of imposing tariffs against China if that country continued with its purchases of Russian oil. Putin, who recognized that Trump was nearing a disruption of the existing status quo, a state of affairs crucial for the Russian president to comfortably perpetuate the war against Ukraine in the coming years, arranged a phone call with the President of the United States, during which he apparently managed to convince Trump that concessions from the Russian side might be possible. But at the same time, it's evident to us that Putin also orchestrated a rather shrewd provocation in the Ukrainian-American sphere, compelling the administration of the President of the United States to advocate for the idea of transferring parts of the Donetsk region, which had not been conquered by the occupying forces, to Russia, allegedly in exchange for a cessation of hostilities. After his meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky, Donald Trump came to understand that Ukraine had no intention of ceding to Russia any territory not already conquered by Russian forces, yet it was ready for a ceasefire along the contact line between the opposing sides. Following this realization, the American president continued to put forth proposals that he had already been advancing since February of this year, which, as we know, are unacceptable to the Russian president. And so, we encountered a completely predictable reaction from the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation, who made sure to remind his American counterpart not only of Russia's uncompromising stance, but also of the so-called sequence of steps. First, a comprehensive peace treaty, and only then a ceasefire. In Putin's view, this specific sequence of steps will allow him to continue the war with Ukraine until the completion of Donald Trump's presidential term, thus safeguarding himself against the American president disrupting the status quo and against any unpredictable moves from Trump. So, we find ourselves in October 2025, precisely at the same point we were in February 2025. Incidentally, this also holds true for the Middle East conflict. Do you recall that at the moment Trump became the President of the United States, there was a ceasefire in the Middle East, which was subsequently violated? It was precisely after this that a new phase of a major war commenced in the Middle East. This demonstrates yet again that Donald Trump's foreign policy tactics are ineffective, owing to the unprofessionalism and incompetence not only of the American president himself, but also of a significant portion of his team. And those who grasp the reality of the situation, like Marco Rubio, are merely feigning activity to avoid incurring Trump's wrath and to steer clear of appearing as if they are sabotaging the ambitious, yet utterly unrealistic plans of an incompetent and short-sighted American president. It is difficult to predict what will unfold next. This is because if Russia truly wishes for Trump not to upset the status quo, the president of the Russian Federation would still need to make significant concessions to his American counterpart. But if Putin doesn't care about Trump's further intentions, then Trump will have to seriously think about changing his tactics and changing them drastically. This means not trying to intimidate Putin with empty words that the Russian president does not give a damn about from the Kremlin bell tower, but rather taking specific and tangible actions. Such actions include the actual transfer of long-range weapons to Ukraine or the imposition of real sanctions against Russia's energy sponsors, and so Trump will constantly He will have to talk about his peaceful intentions and accompany that with concrete steps to put pressure on Russia. And yes, Trump will have to stop boasting that the United States is not contributing financially to aid Ukraine. Instead, he'll need to begin dispersing tens, even hundreds of billions of dollars, just as Donald Trump's predecessor, Joseph Biden, did, whose foreign policy, unlike Trump's, proved more realistic. Without this, it will be impossible to change Putin's position, and sooner or later, the whole world will see what we see now. It will be impossible to change Putin's position, and sooner or later, the whole world will see what we are currently seeing. The only thing the current president of the United States can do with such tactics is be made a fool of. Thank you, friends. Stay on this channel. Subscribe to it. Subscribe to my social media channels, Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, and Donatello, which support these resources. Use YouTube's sponsorship feature. Victory and peace to you. Good luck.